Joe Biden to condemn this.
I don't understand how we have leaders who think that it's okay to tell us as parents that our kids can go and get an abortion without our consent, yet we have no right to keep them home from school. It's just, it's completely hypocritical.
I can't believe that he's calling these folks peaceful protesters.
Well, I think Joe Biden is totally on the wrong page on this, and he's completely out of step with where American women are when they talk about how to protect their families.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
And now we're opening with a bang.
And today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. It's coming back extremely strong. The United States economy added almost 5 million jobs. Likewise, Hispanic employment is up by 1.5 million jobs. 3 million more women were employed in the month of June.
This is better than a V. This is a rocket ship.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of MAGAnomics. I'm Steve Cortes, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign. I'll be joined tonight by Andy Puzder and by the owners of Sammy's Mexican Grill, Betty and Jorge Rivas. Before I joined Team Trump, I spent 25 years working on Wall Street, trading global capital markets and advising some of the biggest institutional investment funds in the world. So I pay very close attention to the economy and to the macroeconomic data, but also to how economic policies make a difference in the lives of regular working people, wage earners, and entrepreneurs. On this show, we will look at the economy from a macro perspective and also drill down to the micro level. What are the effects for Main Street, for your livelihood, your pocketbook? On the macro front, let's talk about what President Trump has accomplished for American workers. Because of the president's pro-growth policies, the great American comeback gained steam. President Trump led the economy to historic heights once before, and now he is doing it again. You can take confidence that the man who produced the first Trump boom can compel the Trump boom 2.0. In May and June, the economy added a record 7.5 million jobs, and that was followed by 1.8 million additional jobs in July. The unemployment rate fell nearly a full percentage point in just a single month. That's because for the first time in decades, President Trump is making the federal government work for the American people. Under the president's leadership, 7 regulations have been cut for every new one introduced. President Trump has renegotiated old trade deals to put our hardworking ranchers and farmers first. President Trump negotiated the USMCA with Canada and Mexico in a move that is expected to add 176,000 jobs to our economy. Before the American people elected Donald Trump to the White House, the swamp creatures controlled Washington, D.C. Multinational corporations and lobbyists owned our capital and only cared about filling their pockets. The Beltway bloviators advanced globalist agendas that worked for their own self-aggrandizement to the detriment of American workers. Through backroom deals with politicians, they pushed trade deals and policies that stifled wages while Washington insiders grew wealthier and more powerful. American workers had to sit on the sidelines as our jobs were outsourced to foreign countries. And who was a champion for all these destructive policies? You guessed it, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a committed corporatist globalist who has shown time and time again that he is in the pocket of foreign interests. Don't believe the media myth of a moderate Biden, and certainly do not accept the myth that Joe Biden represents blue-collar citizens. In fact, the only real achievement of his half-century career in the swamp is consistently exporting American jobs to China. Beijing Biden is the best friend the Chinese Communist Party could ever ask for in Washington. Back in 1993, Joe Biden revealed his globalist approach with a vote for NAFTA, which cost America 850,000 jobs. Then Beijing Biden also voted for and led the effort to give China most favored nation trade status. 3.2 million jobs were lost due to higher trade deficits with China, and 1 million manufacturing jobs were lost between 2000 and 2007. Joe Biden was a key surrogate for the Obama administration's Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have cost Americans 448,000 jobs if President Trump had not wisely pulled out from that disastrous deal. And believe it or not, it gets even worse. Joe Biden plans to enact new policies that will cost the United States millions more jobs. Joe Biden has proposed more than $4 trillion in new taxes if he is elected, and would raise taxes on 82% of American workers, eliminating at least 585,000 jobs. Joe Biden's energy plan is ripped straight from AOC's Green New Deal and would effectively eliminate the American energy sector and eliminate more than 10 million jobs. Not only would Biden and his radical pals inflict tremendous economic damage by assaulting American energy, they would also jeopardize our national security, because America's burgeoning energy dominance ensures that we are no longer beholden to foreign sources of fuel, often in very volatile parts of the world. And we can't forget that Joe Biden's terrible policies led to the slowest economic recovery since World War II while he was vice president. The Obama-Biden slow growth era was terrific for owners of assets, the already successful, but a tough slog for wage earners who saw their incomes languish while expenses soared, especially for items like healthcare. President Trump had to clean up this mess and led to historic unemployment lows until China's coronavirus artificially halted the economy's growth. But now, President Trump is leading the charge to historic gains for the second time in his presidency, something that Joe Biden couldn't even achieve once. This past weekend, President Trump took a historic step forward to building on that success even more. On Saturday, the president signed 4 executive orders to provide Americans with greater economic relief. He displayed strong leadership to break through Nancy Pelosi's legislative logjam. After Democrats failed to negotiate in good faith to pass a new stimulus package, the first executive order extended unemployment benefits so that Americans could receive $400 per week if they had lost their jobs. The second executive order cut the interest rates on student loans and suspended payments until the end of the year. The third executive order extended the freeze on evictions so Americans wouldn't lose their homes during the coronavirus pandemic. And the fourth executive order, and possibly the biggest, freezes payroll taxes until the end of the year for people who make less than $100,000 annually. As the economy continues to open back up for business, President Trump takes bold action to ensure that Americans have more money in their pockets so that they can get back on their feet. Democrats were playing politics with the American people and were attempting to use the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to pass their radical far-left agenda. As confidence grows and the American spirit of enterprise renews, we will soon reclaim the historic heights we enjoyed before the coronavirus. And with the president's recent executive orders, the economy will be stronger than ever before. For America's great economic rebuild to happen, we must re-elect President Trump this November. Joe Biden has made it blatantly clear that he does not care about American workers. His record, as well as his promised agenda for the future, make it clear that he's only interested in job creation in China. Tonight, we will discuss with our guests what President Trump has accomplished for them and go into more details about why it is so important that President Trump is elected for a second term. But first, we have a short commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
Joe Biden has embraced the policies of the radical left. Trillions in new taxes, crushing middle-class families.
If you elect me, your taxes are going to be raised, not cut.
Amnesty for 11 million illegal immigrants.
Citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks.
Reducing police funding.
Yes, absolutely.
The radical left has taken over Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Don't let them take over America.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
We know you want to give Donald Trump 4 more years to fight for you in Washington, but he isn't just up against Joe Biden. He's up against the Democrat fundraising machine, and he needs all the help he can get. Don't just assume because his opponent hasn't completed a single sentence that this campaign is over. Crazy things happen, like this woman becoming Speaker of the House. Support the president today by texting Trump to 88022. Donald Trump is counting on every single one of his supporters to text Trump to 88022 now.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back. I'm Steve Cortes, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign. My first guest tonight is the great Andy Puzder. You might know him as the former chairman of CKE Holdings, which is the parent company for Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. Andy, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, Andy, the executive orders that President Trump signed over the weekend are unprecedented. He's putting millions of dollars back into taxpayer pockets. So I want to ask you, what does it mean for our nation and for the American people as the economy opens back up for business?
Well, look, these executive orders are going to benefit Americans who have jobs through the deferral of payroll taxes, which means about a 7.5% raise. And Americans who are unable to find jobs will benefit through a federally funded $400 per week unemployment insurance supplement, as the prior supplement had expired and basically gone to zero. Right. So there's something in this for you if you have a job. There's something in this for you if you're unable to find a job as we recover, which puts money in consumers' pockets, which is critical to our economic recovery, as 2/3 of our economy is based on consumer spending. So obviously that's a key factor as we reopen for business. The president's executive orders also provide comfort for people who might otherwise be concerned about being evicted from their homes or meeting college loan payments, concerns that are not only debilitating, but also limit consumer spending. People that are worried about meeting their obligations tend not to spend. So these measures should not only help people facing financial difficulties, but also further our economic recovery by enabling them to spend. So as we reopen for business, thank God we have a president who was willing to act and stop the Democrats from holding economic relief hostage, economic relief for needy families to an ideological agenda.
You know, and to that point too, Andy, I want to ask you about that because it's very clear that the Democrats want to play politics with the pandemic rather than address the needs of the American people. You yourself wrote an excellent op-ed that was published at Fox News, and you pulled out a quote that I hadn't seen, so I'm very glad that you brought it to my attention and to a lot of people's attention. I want to read it here. It's from House Majority Whip James Clyburn from South Carolina. He said he sees the pandemic as, quote, a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision. Can you discuss that? Should the Democrats be using the pandemic as a chance to inflict, I would say, to punish the American people with a liberal radical agenda?
No, it's obviously an agenda you couldn't pass in normal times. You couldn't pass without, somehow getting it past the American people in a very deceptive way. And I think that quote really shows the difference between how Republicans and particularly President Trump view the pandemic and how Democrats view it. The president views it as a problem to be solved, which is what his executive orders set out to do and what his economic policies are designed to do. The Democrats view it as an opportunity to enact an agenda. So the reason the president had to do these executive orders was that the Democrats were holding up this legislation in Congress because, one, they wanted to get aid to bail out Democrat-led states that had been fiscally irresponsible. They wanted to reinstate a tax deduction that benefited rich people, rich individuals in Democrat states with high taxes, which, completely contrary to what they tell everybody. They wanted to change the rules on our federal elections to make it easier for them to win election. Now, this has nothing to do with helping families that are out there suffering, helping people that need jobs, helping people that are trying to get through this problem. So the president views it as a problem solver. A business person would view it The
Right.
Democrats are viewing it as ideologues, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Sure. No, I think you're exactly right, Andy. The president approaches it as a problem to be solved, where unfortunately Nancy Pelosi and her cronies see it as an opportunity to be exploited politically.
Yep.
But thankfully, look, let's be honest here, and let's take a realistic look at what is happening and what the president did over the weekend. President Trump is using every tool at his disposal to save American lives and to protect American jobs. Now, this includes the Paycheck Protection Program, which is responsible for saving more than 51 million American jobs. Andy, you are a very accomplished businessman, somebody who's employed a lot of people over the years. Can you explain to us the hardships that business owners would have gone through without the Paycheck Protection Program and how imperative President Trump's quick action was in this regard to saving these businesses?
Well, it's hard to overstate the importance of the Paycheck Protection Program. Let's call it PPP, just so we don't stumble over it. For American businesses, or the importance of the president's quick action. Small businesses employ about 50% of our workforce, and thousands of these small businesses that were ready to lock their doors were able to survive. This program was responsible for saving, as you said, 51 million jobs, but also thousands of small businesses, and it was instrumental in reducing the number of people in need of traditional unemployment benefits. That's a number that's come down by 36%, or about 8 million people since the beginning of May. So speed was the key. Now, I spoke to numerous restaurant owners throughout this process who were concerned about whether the government would give them any help, first of all, and then whether they'd be able to get a loan from the banks that were making these PPP loans. Thanks to quick action by Treasury Department Under Secretary Mnuchin and the Small Business Administration, those restaurants are open today and are actually doing very well. Now, I'm not sure we would even have an economy to rebuild but for this program. So as I said, it's hard to overstate its importance or the importance of President Trump's quick and responsible actions.
Right. And, Andy, look, anyone will acknowledge, of course, that we still have a lot of hard work ahead to get back to the heights of the Trump boom that we were enjoying as recently as the early part of this year. But we also know that jobs are coming back in record numbers. With a second term under President Trump's pro-growth policies, which we hope is going to become a reality that will be decided in November, how quickly do you think that the American economy can recover into a Trump second term from the coronavirus?
It's already coming back very rapidly, as you said, certainly faster than anybody anticipated. The phrase beating economist expectations on just about every economic metric has become all but an oxymoron. And this has Democrats scared to death. As the economy is recovering, demonstrates President Trump's strength as a leader. So we just had the 3 best months of job creation since the government began reporting the data in 1939. That's an additional 9 million jobs in 3 months. So I want to give you some perspective on that. Following the Great Recession, it took the Obama-Biden economy 5 years and 2 months to create 9 million jobs. So President Trump has done in 3 months what it took Obama and Biden 62 months to accomplish. And thanks to Operation Warp Speed, which is rapidly advancing the development and deployment of a vaccine, I think this crisis will essentially be over by Inauguration Day. So assuming President Trump is reelected and his pro-growth policies of tax cuts, deregulation, a focus on domestic energy production, and pro-America trade agreements, assuming that those policies are still in place, we'll be right back where we were very rapidly, and we'll even be better very rapidly. And this won't happen if we elect Joe Biden, because his only plan is to grow the government.
Right. And I do want to ask you about Biden. Let's talk about the alternative vision, unfortunately, that Joe Biden would inflict upon this country. But I also just want to quickly mention, because you cited how great the job growth has been over the last 3 months. Of course, last week we got the latest fantastic, stellar jobs report, 1.8 million new jobs added. You mentioned over 9 million total over the 3 months. It's fascinating to me, and I say this as somebody who spent 25 years on Wall Street trading desks. So I have pored over these monthly jobs reports for decades, traded on them, transacted on them, studied them. When I looked at this report, the most recent one, it was just an out of the park 400-foot home run. However, if you watch mainstream media, if you watch, for example, my former network, CNN, they were trying their damnedest to pour cold water all over this great news for our country, unfortunately. But again, I guess this gets to the point you were making earlier, that the Dems and their allies in the corporate media, and let's face it, that's what corporate media is. It's the public relations arm of the DNC. They don't see this as a problem to be solved. They see it as an opportunity to be exploited.
That's absolutely right. Joe, their complaint was, well, July was down from June. Well, June was the number one month in the history of the Bureau of Labor Statistics reporting job creation. May was the number two month. The only reason July was the number three month was because May and June were so great. I mean, we're seeing such dynamic recovery. I think they're having a hard time covering this up. So hopefully the numbers will continue to come in this strong.
Right. Now, let's talk about Joe Biden and what he would mean for the economy. He's made no effort, of course, to prove that he can lead the great American comeback. And in fact, he is projecting quite the opposite. He's promised trillions of dollars in new taxes, literally the largest tax increase in American history, twice as bad as anything that even Hillary Clinton put on the table. He's also proposed that we effectively eliminate the energy sector in America, a move that would cost more than 10 million jobs and absolutely wreck the economies of many states in our country. So, Andy, I ask you, how disastrous would a Joe Biden presidency be for this great American recovery?
Well, it would be a complete and an unmitigated disaster. Biden has no plan to grow private sector jobs, which are the jobs Americans depend on for their livelihoods and the jobs the government depends on for tax revenue. Without private sector jobs, there is no economic recovery. Now, the lesson of the Trump presidency pre-pandemic was that tax cuts and deregulation incentivize businesses to grow and hire, which causes wages to increase. Under President Trump, we had 20 months with more job openings than people unemployed. Under Obama and Biden, there was not 1 month with more job openings than people unemployed. And wages under President Trump increased 3% or more for 20 consecutive months, with bigger increases for blue collar than for white collar workers, something that never happened during virtually the entire Obama-Biden administration.
And so I think that's such an important point, that the people who had lagged during the slow growth Obama years were the people who leapt to the lead in the Trump boom, the first Trump boom. I believe we're going to have a Trump boom 2.0, but I'll give you one stat in that regard, something that's important to me as an Hispanic. In the entire history of the United States, there have been before President Trump, there was 1 month ever where the Hispanic jobless rate was below 5%. That was back in 2006. Since then, under President Trump's leadership, there were 23 straight months where the Hispanic jobless rate in America was under 5%. So the American strivers, blue collar people, people who maybe didn't have advanced degrees, who previously didn't do well under the slow growth Obama years, those were the people who, as I said, leapfrogged to the front in terms of enjoying the biggest gains, particularly when it comes to wages in Trump's boom.
That's exactly right. And, Biden's whole economic plan is to grow government. He wants $2 trillion for climate change, $700 billion to empower unions, and $775 billion to create government jobs. His website even refers to helping deserving companies, which means government favored companies. So this is all to be paid for by overtaxing both individuals and businesses. So none of this will grow private sector jobs for Hispanics, for Blacks, for Asians, for people with only a high school education, for women, for anybody. Businesses know you can't tax and spend your way to prosperity. Obama and Biden tried that for 8 years and failed miserably. The worst recovery since World War II. Why go back to what we know will fail when we can reelect President Trump and do what we know succeeds?
Right. Andy, I want to ask you a more broad question that's not necessarily political, but because you were the chairman of a very large quick service restaurant chain.
Actually, I was CEO. I was CEO of the company. Yes.
CEO. I think it's very important to talk about first jobs and how important they are, because there's a lot of talk out there, unfortunately, on the left, really trying to disparage entry-level positions in industries like the quick service restaurant chain. My first job was a caddy. It's not exactly glamorous, but it taught me a lot. Learned to make money, learned to show up on time, learned to be respectful to the customers, who in that case were golfers. But, obviously it's never meant to be a family-sustaining job. I suspect the same is true, or you would view it in the same way in the quick service restaurant industry. Can you talk to us about how important jobs are, even those entry-level jobs that might not be glamorous or sexy, might not pay a whole lot, but put us American citizens on the road to something better?
Look, those jobs are absolutely critical. I started out scooping ice cream at Baskin-Robbins. That was my first job where I got a paycheck. And I learned a lot at that job. You learn how to deal with consumers. You learn how to be part of a team. You learn about inventory. You learn about a company making money, whether the business is going to succeed or fail based on whether or not they make a profit. All of that comes home to you very strongly when you're in fact working one of these jobs. And look, the people who ran our restaurants, we have about 3,000 Carl's and Hardee's in the United States when I was running the company. And the general managers who ran those restaurants all started out by, cleaning the drink bar, cleaning the floors, working these minimum wage jobs. And they ended up running a $1.2 million, $1.4 million business in $1 million facility with 25 employees. They had responsibility to the public. They had responsibility for a profit and loss statement for people that couldn't go to college. They either couldn't afford it, and we did offer benefits where people could go to college, but for people that couldn't afford it or college wasn't the right track for them, this was like a mini MBA program. You really learned how to run a business, what it was to be part of a business. If we don't have those entry-level jobs, if we price those entry-level jobs out of our economy, the people that are most in need of employment opportunities are going to lose those opportunities. And this is the problem with progressive policy. They always try and make it sound like they're helping the little guy and the little gal, when in fact all they're doing is empowering government and increasing their own power.
Right. And by the way, when you mentioned that it was a de facto education, almost an MBA, the way universities are going these days, they probably learned more by running a restaurant than they would learn in a college classroom, unfortunately. Andy Puzder, I thank you so much for being our guest today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. We're going to take a quick commercial break and back with more.
In 2016, we built an unbeatable operation that changed history. Now, we unveil our next breakthrough. The exclusive Trump 2020 app. This isn't just an app. This is your source for real news, not fake news. Straight from the campaign and the president himself. This is your direct line to give input on key campaign issues. Your portal to register voters. Host MAGA meetups. Your scheduler. Your application on becoming a Trump team leader.
Join millions and get a front row seat to our virtual events. Watch Team Trump every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Earn points, get rewarded. Get the presidential photo. Oh, and did we mention this is your personal shopper too? So just to repeat, this isn't just an app. This is your tool to keep America great. Join the army for Trump and download the app today.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to MAGAnomics. I'm Steve Cortes, and I'm now joined by Betty and Jorge Rivas, the owners of Sammy's Mexican Grill in Arizona. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
You bet. So listen, both of you have had the chance to meet President Trump, which of course is quite a thrill for any American. And he even shouted out to your restaurant on Twitter earlier this year. So I'm going to ask you, Betty and Jorge, and let's start ladies first. We'll start with Betty. Tell us about yourselves and tell us about your restaurant.
But the restaurant is very good. A lot of people to come and support to us because these people love the nation and love the Donald J. Trump.
And Betty, how did you get the inspiration to start your restaurant?
We started about 20. Well, no, actually, we started the business about 24 years ago. But we started in a lunch wagon, and we ran the lunch wagon going to the construction sites, and we thought that it was good business. And a couple of years later, we decided that our future plans were to have our own little place, and that's how little by little we started saving money, buying little items here and there for a future restaurant. That's how it began.
Okay, so first effectively mobile catering to construction sites,
Yes.
but your dream was to have your own physical location, and you've done that now.
Yeah, I mean, we give the example to people that don't know and people who wants to, maybe younger kids, that the first item that we bought for a restaurant was a mop bucket that we bought 12 years before we opened our restaurant. So since back then we started to buying little things like napkin holders and stuff like that, and we just stored it in the garage or anywhere, a storage room for a place that we didn't know when it was going to open, where or how long it will take, but we knew that our goal and our dream was to have our own place, and we accomplished it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you would start to buy equipment for the place that you were dreaming about. So they were tangible reminders of what you were working toward, that someday we're going to need these napkin holders because we're going to own our own place.
Right. Yes. A little by little, we were, getting things. And then at one moment, we found this piece of land, empty land that was for sale. And we went ahead and got a loan from the bank. We refinanced our house. And then we bought the piece of property, and it sat there for quite a few years. And then later on, as time went by, we started saving more money, and then we got an architect to help us design our small restaurant. So it's been a very great experience for us.
Right. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so you two own your small business, and you know how difficult it has been to maintain operations throughout this coronavirus pandemic, particularly because you're in a directly customer-facing business. So can I ask you, how have you used the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, during coronavirus? Has this program been critical to you and to your business?
It has been very essential because when the local government started shutting down the restaurants, they say, oh, people cannot eat inside your restaurants. People cannot, eat outside. It's all to go. So that made the sales drop considerably. Sure. So we use the money, to help pay for bills, to help pay for insurance, and make sure that our employees were getting paid, almost the same as they were making before. And it helped us, stay in business. So it's been a very necessary and helpful thing that the government, especially the president, has done for a small business like ours.
Right. And, here's what I think is so important in this regard, and I think Americans realize this. We don't want this to be the long-term solution. Of course not. We don't want federal government aid to businesses, to small business all over the country. However, this was an incredibly unusual situation. This was nobody's fault. Betty and Jorge, you didn't do anything wrong. Your restaurant didn't do anything wrong. The Chinese Communist Party, they're the only people who are culpable for what happened. They deceived the world, they infected the globe, and they crashed the international economy. And it affected everybody in the world, but particularly small business folks like you. So it was important that you received federal aid because, again, through no fault of your own, you were closed down. But
yes.
I also want to get your opinion on what happened over the weekend, because we can talk about what has happened in the past and what can now happen in the future. And so over the weekend, President Trump, he signed 4 executive orders to provide critical economic relief to Americans. One of them extended unemployment benefits, enhanced unemployment benefits for Americans who have lost their jobs and are still looking. Another cut the payroll tax for people who are working. For those who make less than $100,000 annually, they're going to get an instant raise by suspending the payroll tax. So I want to ask you two, how important do you think these moves are for the American people, the bold action that President Trump took over the weekend? And can you give us some insight into how beneficial it is, particularly to you two as small business owners?
Well, one of the reasons why we started supporting the president, since he was running the first time in 2016, is that we understood and we realized that he was the type of candidate that loved this country a whole lot. His decisions, his way of talking is because he wants to make to keep America great, and at the same time to make sure that every citizen also is doing great. So I know that his decisions are based on what is best for the country. So the things that he's been doing, the things that he did, passing those what he signed, is things that will help every citizen in this country, and it's also going to help people like ourselves, a small business, because it's going to give us more, a better opportunity to keep succeeding and for our business to keep doing well. So it is extremely, extremely important that we keep and that we have a president like Donald Trump, and that we re-elect him because he's doing the right thing, not only for us, not only for a certain amount of people, but every single person, every American, to be doing great and to be successful, much more successful in the future.
You know, and he has such a heart for entrepreneurs because he was an entrepreneur himself. And he, of course, has a heart for the Hispanic community as well, all Americans, of course. But the very first time that I ever entered the Oval Office, shortly after he was inaugurated in 2017, the very first thing that he asked me, I'd worked very hard for him during the campaign, and the very first thing he asked me is, he said, Steve, what can I do to help Hispanic Americans? And my answer to him was small business, because Hispanics are the most likely, statistically likely people in America to be entrepreneurs. So if you help small business, you're going to help all Americans, but you're going to particularly help Hispanic Americans. So he has a heart for it. You mentioned, Betty and Jorge, that you supported the president back in 2016, but unfortunately, you've taken some blowback and some criticism for supporting the president. Isn't that the case?
That is exactly right. I mean, since the beginning, when some mean-spirited people started attacking us, they found out that Betty and I own a small restaurant. So not only they went after us personally, but also, I mean, over the phone, over the comments in social media, et cetera, they were saying, you know what, let's shut down this place. Let's make sure they go run out of business, even threats of burning down our building. So, yeah.
It's unfortunate. A lot of people, unfortunately, in the political left, they don't believe in persuasion. They don't believe in trying to win an argument. Instead, they believe in tactics of intimidation. It's really unfortunate, you know, and it's really un-American. But I want to also ask you, as small business owners, about Joe Biden, because in comparison to what President Trump has accomplished for Americans and for small business owners, Joe Biden wants to massively raise taxes on hardworking Americans. He has promised trillions of dollars in new taxes. He's effectively proposed that we eliminate the energy sector. So, Betty and Jorge, I'd like to know your opinion on Joe Biden's plans. How detrimental do you think the Biden agenda would be for small businesses like yours?
Yeah, it will definitely hurt a small business like ours. And, you know, to me, it's kind of, it is not, Joe Biden is not the right person for this country. When I think of great leaders, I think, you know, President Trump, right? I think of Dwight Eisenhower, people that were, you know, sharp, even if they were older gentlemen, they were sharp and right on the money. But I mean, unfortunately, I think Joe Biden, if he was great, you know, a few years ago, that wasn't the past. I think he's not the right person to lead the country, because we need someone like President Trump, who's sharp, who's tough, who's right there making the right decisions. And Joe Biden coming up with these ideas, liberal ideas, and socialism, that's not what we want. I mean, people like ourselves, that we came to this country looking for opportunity, looking for a place to work hard, to get up early and be safe. And now he wants to come up with ideas that we know that definitely do not work. We know that it will turn out to be like Venezuela, where millions of people are escaping Venezuela because they cannot find food, work, you know, security. So, I mean, just thinking about electing Joe Biden, it just makes me want to be more involved in making sure people like ourselves are educated and know for a fact that going to that style of business, to that style of ideas is the wrong way to go.
Right. You know, listen, you make such a couple of really important points there, I think, Jorge. One is that Joe Biden, let's face it, he has been in the Washington swamp for a half century. He was elected to the Senate in 1972. That's the year I was born. And folks, I'm not young, okay? I have children in college. He was literally elected to the Senate when I was in diapers. And I would say this, there's a mainstream media myth out there that Joe Biden is a moderate. They're trying to push that myth. Now, during his 47 years of public life, there may have been times that he was relatively centrist, but that is not the Joe Biden of 2020. So I want all American voters to take a very hard and very critical look at what Joe Biden believes today, not what he might have believed in the 1970s or the 1980s. But also, Jorge, you bring up the point of immigrants coming to this country wanting something very different from the place that they came from. Right. People like you who came from Latin America, my own father who came from Latin America, they didn't come here to try to repeat the mistakes of Latin America, the mistakes of socialism and liberalism here in the United States. We came here, we're proud of our culture, our language, our food, our customs, all of it. But we want the American way of life and the American way of free enterprise. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, the American dream is more famous, you know, outside the United States than within the United States, because people back in countries where I came from, we dream of having your own business. We dream of having a nice house. We dream of, you know, making sure that your kids go to college. Many things that Americans will take for granted for people, on countries like where I came from, it's only a dream. Once you come here, you're given the opportunity to succeed, to be, have a comfortable house, live in a nice neighborhood, owning your own business. It's a dream that happens. If you work hard, if you get up early, it will happen. It's not only a dream, but it's a reality, and something that, like I say, many other places you can only dream about. So right. for that's why one of the reasons why we support the president, that's why we love America, because it has been given to us the opportunity to be successful, to be more than we ever think that we could be. So for those reasons, we are not only very grateful, but also that's what makes us get involved and support people like President Trump that really love this country and want this place and want this nation to keep being successful. It has been for so many years.
Right. Jorge, it's inspiring me, really, just listening to you talk about your love for this country, about your yearning to be successful people, to employ people, to provide opportunity for yourselves and for others. It's just incredibly inspiring. Now, listen, last question for you. I absolutely love Mexican food. So I want to ask you, at Sammy's Mexican Grill, what is the best dish? I hope to get to visit you. If I do, what should I order?
Well, you can have the Sammy's burrito, which has carne asada, guacamole, sour cream, and pico de gallo, or our newest item in the menu is the MAGA burger. It's a double patty, very tasty, with jalapenos, bacon, and a spring mix, and a little bit of the Sammy special sauce.
Oh boy, the MAGA burger. You know what? I'm going to call the president and say, fire up Air Force One. We're going to get MAGA burgers at Sammy's in Arizona. Yes. Betty and Jorge, so appreciate you taking time to join us tonight. You are inspiring Americans. You're incredible entrepreneurs. You're patriots. And it was such a pleasure having both of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
You bet. Thank you. We need your help to defend our great country against Joe Biden and the radical Democrats. The stakes could not be any higher this November. We need all the patriots at home watching right now to join our fight to re-elect President Donald J. Trump. Here's how you can get involved. Download the new groundbreaking Trump 2020 app, now available on Apple and Android. To stay in contact with us, please text Trump to 88022. I'd like to thank our amazing guests, Betty and Jorge Rivas and Andy Puzder, again for joining us this evening. And a special thank you to all of our amazing supporters watching at home. We'll see you again next time on MAGAnomics.